In the middle of the night, while the country slept, a decision was finalized that will change the financial picture for millions of older Americans, and it happened without a single camera rolling. Breaking news confirmed in the early morning, right around 2 a.m., emerged through channels the vast majority of people never see, stunning even veteran analysts who track these matters. The authorization of $2,000 rebate checks linked to tariff funds is now a locked-in reality, a move that transformed weeks of cautious speculation into a concrete, actionable plan, leaving both official Washington and countless families surprised by its quiet arrival. The administration gave a late-night sign-off, a process that didn't play out on television screens or in orchestrated briefings, but within the operational gears that turn policy concepts into tangible results. In a rare step, especially for a measure touching so many lives, leadership approved an updated framework for these rebates, shifting the conversation from pure debate to confirmed action. There was no prime-time address drafted, no victory lap planned for the evening news, no extended press conference to frame the narrative for the public. Instead, the validation came via internal administrative updates from the Treasury, the kind that typically only surface once the levers of government have already switched from the planning phase to the implementation phase. And for older adults nationwide, particularly those managing on set incomes that haven't risen alongside the escalating price of food, healthcare, and housing, this quiet shift holds a deeper meaning than the headlines suggest. Beneath the lack of spectacle and political noise, a substantive change occurred, one that could directly impact your day-to-day stability, your economic peace of mind, and your capacity to manage in an increasingly costly world. Now, before we proceed, before we unpack the specifics, the schedules, and the qualifications, let me pause and state my purpose here clearly. For over a decade, my work has been alongside retirees, those who've lost spouses, family caregivers, and partners entering their later years. I've been in living rooms, heard the anxiety when funds run short before the month does, assisted with complex benefit navigation, and supported individuals through financially fragile chapters. My driving focus has always been clear and consistent: to help older adults safeguard their resources, find security amidst economic fluctuation, and make money decisions free from fear, pressure, or manipulation. My aim in this talk isn't to sensationalize or seed worry. I'm not here to manufacture panic, false deadlines, or pledges I can't honor. I'm here to move through this with you, calmly and transparently, so you grasp what transformed overnight, why it's relevant to someone in your shoes, and what your genuine next steps are or aren't. No tricks, no pressure, just straightforward facts shared with respect for your insight and your lived experience. So, let's walk through this methodically, the way we would if we were having a thoughtful discussion at your dining table, working through something significant without added stress or confusion. What transpired after dark wasn't merely the validation of a sum of money, not just a figure getting a rubber stamp in some governmental procedure. The more profound adjustment happened internally, in a manner most news summaries will overlook entirely. Department analysts examined fresh data and economic projections that had been processing for weeks. Real-world intelligence on how various groups are genuinely coping with inflation and price pressures. That intelligence underscores something countless seniors experience personally each time they check the price of eggs, each time a pharmacy copay inches up, each time the heating bill arrives and is higher than the last, despite using less. Fixed incomes don't flex the way they once did. The arithmetic of daily life has shifted, even if the monthly benefit amount has remained largely static. The initial architecture of this effort concentrated on working individuals and middle-class families impacted by rising tariffs, households facing steeper costs on imported items, families where all adults work yet still feel pinched. But the revised guidelines, the ones locked in last night, disclosed a subtle redesign, a pivot in focus that occurred not due to lobbying or headlines, but because the statistics became undeniable. A pivot that at last acknowledges that older Americans, especially those relying on monthly government payments that don't adapt swiftly to actual living costs, are absorbing inflation's bite more deeply than many recognize. They feel price hikes more sharply because they possess less wiggle room, fewer avenues to boost earnings, and budgets that are already maximally lean. This wasn't broadcasted loudly because it wasn't political performance crafted for approval ratings. It was procedural clearance, a signal to transition from blueprint to action, from conceptual models to real-world rollout. And that carries more weight than you might think, because developments that occur without fanfare often advance quicker than those subjected to public political skirmishes. Here's the real-world implication in terms that don't demand an economics diploma. Simply put, this rebate initiative is financed via funds gathered from tariffs on imports, not through classic stimulus packages that need prolonged congressional back and forth. That detail is crucial because tariff income already exists. It's already entering federal accounts daily as products cross the border. The Treasury doesn't require a whole new act of Congress each time qualification details are tweaked or groups are refined. Once the broad categories are authorized at a high level, which they now are, the administrative apparatus can proceed with reduced political friction. And last evening, that apparatus took a substantive, quiet step, with older adults moving nearer to the front of the assessment line. Not as a secondary addition, but as an acknowledgement of economic exposure. But let's stay rooted in reality, because grounded understanding is more valuable than inflated expectation. This does not equate to immediate deposits hitting your bank account tomorrow. It does not mean every person automatically qualifies irrespective of their financial picture. And it does not mean delivery dates are fixed or timelines are immutable. What it does signify, and this is important, is that individuals with the minimal financial flexibility, those balancing food, energy, and healthcare costs on the same constrained check each month, those who can't simply work overtime or secure a side job to cover the difference, are finally being factored in sooner rather than later. Having sat across from innumerable individuals listening to narratives of concern, resilience, and quiet fortitude, stories seldom included in policy debates or economic summaries, I can tell you this: being acknowledged counts. Having your situation seen matters. Having your actual circumstances recognized by those crafting the rules matters more than many officials appreciate. And that's the core change that happened here overnight. So, as we continue, I want you to feel anchored, not agitated. There is momentum, real and substantive, but no cause for alarm, haste, or rumor chasing. We'll proceed steadily, clearly, and attentively, ensuring you comprehend each part before moving to the next. When folks initially hear rebate checks approved, it can sound like something entirely novel materialized from thin air, as if a magic wand was waved to conjure funds that didn't previously exist. But the reality is more mundane, more practical, and arguably more stable. This program didn't materialize from the ether. It's connected to tariff income, meaning money already being collected on goods entering the nation. Funds that have been accumulating in Treasury holdings for a long while. Rather than engineering a brand new stimulus package with protracted political struggle, competing bills, endless revisions, and months of deliberation, the Treasury has been operating within a pre-existing framework, utilizing revenue that's already present, and moving through administrative pathways that don't demand starting from zero. And that's significant because when a measure fits inside an established structure, when it uses existing legal authority and existing revenue flows, it encounters fewer obstacles, fewer points where progress can stall or get blocked. Reviews certainly still exist. Safeguards absolutely remain to ensure funds reach the correct recipients. But the pathway is more direct than launching entirely new legislation. That's partly why last night's confirmation felt distinct from a typical policy proclamation. It wasn't a declaration designed for cheers or partisan advantage. It was an indicator that internal clearances had progressed sufficiently for the next stage to commence, that all components were aligned to actually advance. Now, I need to express this carefully, because managing expectations thoughtfully is crucial. A green light inside the Treasury doesn't mean checks are being printed tomorrow or that electronic transfers will populate accounts this week. Picture it more like a train finally departing the station after a long wait on the tracks. It's in motion, unquestionably in motion, but it still must complete the entire journey before reaching its stops. First, eligibility assessments finish processing, evaluating millions of records to decide who meets the criteria. Then records are synchronized across different government databases to ensure information is precise and current. Then payout methods are authenticated to confirm money will arrive at the proper accounts or mailing addresses. Only after those elements are aligned, only after everything is confirmed and cross-verified, does the actual distribution operation begin. And if you're at home thinking, so where does that leave me? Am I included? Will this assist me? That is entirely normal and completely reasonable. My job here is to help you navigate the uncertainty while offering the clearest view possible based on what we genuinely know. No extravagant guarantees, no amplified timelines meant to generate buzz. Just the truth, delivered with consideration and respect. So why did older adults suddenly find themselves closer to the front of that line? Why did the emphasis tilt towards seniors on fixed incomes? Frankly, not due to politics, and not because someone sought media attention or wanted to court a specific demographic. The reason is simpler and more human than political strategy. The latest analyses revealed something the statistics could no longer conceal, something that became incontrovertible when experts examined the information honestly. Seniors were bearing more strain than anticipated, and they were running out of capacity to adapt, running out of pathways to respond to climbing expenses. Groceries crept upward each month. Energy costs quietly increased with every season. Medication copays rose slightly with each prescription renewal. Even minor hikes, manageable alone, began accumulating like stones placed one upon another until the load felt overwhelming. And while working households sometimes have the option to pick up an extra shift, drive for a delivery service on weekends, find part-time earnings, or request overtime, retirees frequently lack that choice. Their income is fixed, determined when they retired or began receiving benefits. Their budget is already lean after years of adjustments. There isn't much left to reduce without forgoing essentials, without facing decisions no one should confront. I've witnessed this closely countless times over the past 10 years, and it's heartbreaking each instance. A widower extending his heart medication because he fears the refill date will arrive before his next deposit, leaving insufficient funds for both medicine and groceries. A pair deciding which invoice to pay now and which can wait another week. Managing due dates like an intricate puzzle, where one misstep triggers a chain reaction of penalties. Seniors quietly declining trips to see grandchildren, or turning down visits simply because the fuel cost feels like an unjustifiable luxury. People eating smaller portions, cooling their homes less in summer, going without items that would enhance their daily life simply because the math no longer works. None of that appears in political rallies or economic indices, but it emerges clearly in the data when you search for it, when you pose the right queries and listen sincerely to the responses. And eventually, even the most technical reviewers, those who usually just examine data sets and projections, cannot disregard it. The human circumstance breaks through the figures. And that's what changed. Instead of merely asking who qualifies based on income thresholds and eligibility equations, decision-makers started posing a different, more compassionate question. Who possesses the least capacity to recover if we delay? Who will be most harmed by postponement? Who requires this assistance most urgently? And when that question evolved, when the framework moved from pure eligibility to prioritizing need, the priorities evolved with it. Not to advantage one group over another, not to engage in political favoritism, but to acknowledge economic fragility. To acknowledge that retirement for many isn't a period of ease and recreation. It's a tightrope walk, a continual calculation, a daily navigation of finite resources stretched to cover infinite requirements. So, the review procedure was reconfigured to better mirror actual life, to align the system's priorities with the tangible financial strain people endure. Seniors, particularly those relying heavily on federal benefits like Social Security, SSI, or disability payments, are no longer tacitly placed at the queue's end by default. They are being seen earlier, evaluated sooner, and considered with greater attentiveness. That doesn't assure immediate outcomes. It doesn't assure uniform timing for every recipient. But it does mean someone finally conceded that financial pressure in retirement feels distinct from financial pressure during working years, and that it warrants a different degree of attention, a different priority in how support is allocated. So, if you're listening now and thinking, at last, someone gets what we're dealing with, I want you to know that feeling is justified. This isn't about vowing the moon or ensuring specific results. It's about recognizing the burden you've been quietly shouldering and ensuring the system stops ignoring its presence, stops pretending that retirees on fixed incomes can simply adapt like others can. As the Treasury reshaped the program in recent weeks, as they scrutinized models, data, and real-world feedback, they didn't merely append seniors to the bottom of an existing list as an afterthought. They reconstructed the review process itself from the foundation, and they did so in a way meant to move those with the least adaptability closer to the front of the line. Instead of treating every household identically, applying the same timeline and process regardless of situation, they established what I consider priority channels. Not to complicate the system needlessly and not to favor groups based on politics, but to better correlate actual financial pressure with review timing, to ensure the people who need help most urgently are the ones processed first. In the original configuration, the driving assumption was that working families would feel the swiftest impact from tariffs because they purchase imported goods and see instant price jumps. Thus, they received earlier attention in the planning. But the new reports, the ones that arrived in recent weeks and finally reached the pertinent desks, depicted a very different scenario. Seniors, especially lower-income seniors whose entire household budget derives from a monthly benefit that scarcely changes, were actually being squeezed more quickly and severely than projected. They were hitting financial limits faster because they began with no buffer, no supplementary income to rely on when costs rose. So, the model pivoted to reflect that truth. In straightforward terms, here's how that pivot operates in practice. There is a first channel, what internal memos term the priority channel, crafted specifically for individuals who possess the least purchasing power and the smallest financial buffer to withstand shocks. Many seniors who live primarily on Social Security, supplemental security income, or disability benefits naturally fall into this group simply based on their income level and life situation. These cases tend to progress through review more rapidly, not because anyone deemed them more worthy on ethical grounds, but because the system now recognizes, based on data and scrutiny, that a $50 surge in food costs or an unexpected medical expense can destabilize everything rapidly when income is static, when there's no extra to cushion the blow. Then there is a second channel for households that still qualify based on income and situation, but have marginally more room to handle expenses temporarily. They have some savings, some flexibility, some ability to adjust short-term. Their reviews continue methodically, just at a pace reflecting their somewhat less pressing scenario. Because this isn't solely about spreadsheet figures, eligibility grids, databases, or governmental systems processing files. It's also about what countless seniors have quietly borne for years without protest, without demanding spotlight, without feeling entitled to recognition. Rising costs have a way of infiltrating daily existence in manners that outsiders, those not living on fixed incomes, don't always perceive or comprehend. It's selecting the store brand when the name brand was once affordable and fine. It's setting the thermostat a degree lower than comfortable due to worry over the utility statement. It's spacing medical appointments or deferring needed care because co-pays accumulate faster than income permits. It's stretching things that shouldn't be stretched. Making a meal last an extra serving. Skipping medication doses to extend the supply. Delaying car upkeep until something fails, rather than performing preventive maintenance. And often, it's doing all that silently, privately, without telling your children because you don't wish to concern them and don't want to feel burdensome. I've heard that tone in voices across dining tables and phone calls innumerable times. That blend of resilience and quiet fatigue, that resolve to persist mingled with weariness from the relentless effort it demands. That's why this priority shift matters. Why this acknowledgement feels significant even if the dollar amount doesn't resolve everything. Not because $2,000 solves all, it won't. It won't transform your retirement or erase all financial pressure, but it symbolizes acknowledgement, a simple recognition that retirement shouldn't feel like a constant struggle to keep pace, that individuals who worked diligently, raised families, paid taxes, and built our communities merit dignity and breathing room, not mere survival. When policymakers finally looked beyond spreadsheets and economic models and saw the lived reality of fixed income existence, when they listened to the data revealing real people making impossible choices, something softened. Something shifted from pure calculation to recognition of human need. And even though it arrived without speeches or spotlights, without political theater or campaign vows, that recognition still holds meaning. If you've felt unseen in your struggles, if you've ever wondered whether anyone notices the sacrifices you make month after month, whether anyone comprehends that you're not complaining but simply striving to endure in an economy that shifted faster than your income could adjust, I want you to know you are not invisible. Your reality is not imagined. You are not complaining when you acknowledge that circumstances are harder than they should be. You are navigating a financial landscape that changed more swiftly than your income did, where expenses rose dramatically while fixed benefits barely moved. And that is not your failure. That is not poor planning or insufficient savings or any personal shortcoming. That is the environment transforming around you while you stood on ground that suddenly felt less firm. My hope each time I share conversations like this, each time I attempt to translate policy into plain language and bureaucracy into human terms, is to help you feel steadier, more informed, and less isolated as events unfold. To offer you clarity without hype, understanding without fear, hope without empty promises. And as we gently approach concluding our time today, I want to leave you with something simple and grounding. If this discussion helped you feel even slightly more assured, even a bit more prepared, even marginally less anxious about what's ahead, I am truly thankful. That is why I do this work. Not to frighten you with worst-case scenarios, not to pledge miracles that won't materialize, but to walk alongside you with clarity and calm, treating you with the respect and dignity you merit. And if you found value here, if this talk provided useful insights or eased your mind, there's a strong chance another senior out there, someone in your life or community, could use similar reassurance. If you feel comfortable, liking this video helps more people find clarity without fear. It helps more seniors understand what's real versus rumor. And that matters more than algorithms or view counts. It matters because real people need real information. I would also love to hear from you because your wisdom, your experience, your perspective truly matters and can assist others on similar paths. What is one money habit, lesson, or truth you wish you had learned earlier? Maybe it's about saving differently or starting sooner. Maybe it's about not assisting everyone else at the expense of your own security, about setting boundaries around your financial well-being. Maybe it's about asking questions earlier instead of feeling embarrassed or assuming others comprehend things you don't. Whatever it is, whatever insight you've gained through your journey, sharing it may help someone walking the path just behind you. Someone feeling the same worry you once felt, someone believing they're alone in their struggle. Your experience isn't merely a personal story. It's guidance. It's wisdom earned through living. And it matters. And as always, I'll keep monitoring this situation closely, tracking developments, reading updates from Treasury and other official sources, and translating them into clear language so you never feel lost in the noise, never feel confused by jargon or overwhelmed by bureaucracy. Whenever there's real, meaningful movement, whenever something changes that impacts your situation, I'll be right here, calmly breaking it down step by step with honesty and care. Until then, in this space between approval and implementation, between confirmation and arrival, take a breath. Stay patient with the process, stay informed without obsessing, and remember, you deserve stability, respect, and peace in this season of your life. You've earned it through decades of work, contribution, and perseverance. And while the system doesn't always move as swiftly as we'd prefer, this shift represents progress toward finally seeing that reality. Will you do me a favor? If this information brought you some clarity today, please hit the like button and mention you found it on my channel. It truly helps others in our community find this guidance.